We'll just wait another minute or two, but I'll just start. So good evening and welcome everyone to the third installment of the Solstice Speaker Series here at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum. Isn't it a beautiful night outside? My name is Teresa Walter, and I'm the First Nations Program Specialist here at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum. And this is our third installment. So we based our speaker series on the natural calendar on the solstices. And so this is, I think Sunday was the actual spring equinox or spring solstice. So we're only a couple days behind. But we just wanted to have a sort of an evening speaker series so that we could have more people come out, to an evening event. And it's 4 series. Our next one will be in June for the summer solstice. And our first one we started off with the end of September was in honor of Orange Shirt Day. And then in December, for the winter solstice, we had a conversation on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. So it is my honor to start this evening off by asking Knowledge Keeper Tim Petra for the opening prayer as we gather to listen, to learn, and to look to the future together.
Tanse anintigo hamitaki api wahanchuka hokshala hemelo maskapini elwati. Good evening, everybody. I'm really happy to see our young people here from Mother Teresa. This is what it's all about. You're going to make us all happy. So in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we got over 9,000 students missing. Let's remember those that didn't get a chance to live to see the benefit of education. So join me in prayer however you can. I'm going to pray in my language and then English. Mitaki api. Hatishina tonka, Wambling Scarton Kashina, Inaun Chimaka, Wahanchuka Oxla Hemilo Tonkashla, Wopila Tonkashla, and Petoaste, Imakia Pina, Oyate, Lewa Kuji Tonkashli, Unchika Tonkashla, Mia Chakin Kashon, we all Piata, Iasapo, Wazia and Luto, we own your party, Toka Gati and Scott, Tishina Tonka, Wambling Scarton Kashina, Inaun Chimaka, Imakia Pina, Oyate, Unchika Tonkashla, Lewa Kayo. Lewan Kansha Tonkashla, Leonshika Tonkashla, Lewa Chosni Oshki, Uyushki Tonkashla, Mia Chakin Tonkashla, Wopila. Ask today, grandfather, and look down upon each and every one of us with pity. Watch over your room and our young people that are here to sing and give us good energy. Make their voices strong and their hearts brave. Give us that good health, happiness, help, and understanding that we all need to survive. For all these young children that have never lived to see the benefit of education, put a blessing on their families they leave behind. Watch over them. Take pity upon them. Help us all to create a better, stronger tomorrow off of these atrocities. For without your kindness and pity, we can go nowhere. I just wanted to explain, I'm 4th generation residential school survivor. I've spent 10 years in the institution. I was restless here. They stick me in there by myself, and then the friends started coming in, so I started making new friends. So there was one of them really getting cheeky to me. I like that. I like teasing. We got to have fun. But I just wanted to say that I'm a grandfather of 10, great-grandfather of 2. It's good to see old friends I haven't seen in a long time. So let's enjoy the event this evening through the museum. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you, Knowledge Keeper Tim. Right after I invite the Honourable Minister Laura Ross, just before I do that, I skipped over some other important things here. I will be turning the microphone over to our MC for this evening, our series sponsor from Saskatchewan Government Insurance, Jeremy Pilon, who will then introduce Chief Cadmus Delorme and our other guests this evening. After the presentation, there will be time for Q&A, and this will be followed by tea and bannock that will be served in the lower T-Rex gallery. Some of you may have already stepped out and got some, that's fine. So it is down the stairs where the big Scotty is. So please, everyone, stay and enjoy the refreshments. So now I would like to introduce the Honorable Laura Ross, Minister of Parks, Culture and Sport, to say a few words.
Well, good evening, everyone. Oh my gosh, there was such a buzz in this room. It was fabulous. I think each and every one of us can be thankful that we're able to get together. I want to thank Knowledge Keeper Tim Petre for the thoughtful blessing. Perfect way to open this evening. I would also like to begin by acknowledging that the land on where I'm standing is Treaty 4 territory and the traditional home of the Métis. Joining me this evening, I have some special guests, which are colleagues of mine that we have joining us. We have Jeremy Cockrell, the MLA for North Battleford, Jim Lemage, the MLA for Athabasca. We have Dana Scorpath, the MLA from Arm River, and Alana Ross, the MLA from PA Northcote. Thank you for joining us this evening. And it's so wonderful to have everyone here this evening to see this auditorium packed for our SGI spring solstice, I guess it would be, series program. Tonight's discussion around fostering reconciliation and healing is so important. It is vital we remember that we are all in this together and that we are all connected. And that we are so fortunate to have leaders like our guest speaker this evening. Right now, Cowessess First Nation Chief Cadmus Delorme is one of the most powerful voices for reconciliation in our country. And we are very honored to have my friend here this evening. Chief Delorme, your leadership, your commitment to positive change is truly commendable. The strength and courage that you have shown through such challenging times has been an inspiration to all of us. I know we all look forward to your presentation this evening and what we have inherited. Understanding the truth is the first step to fostering reconciliation and healing. It is a journey that we all need to be part of. In closing, my sincere appreciation to everyone for being here this evening, to the RSM staff, SGI, and the Friends of the Royal Saskatchewan Museum for making tonight's event possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Ross, for your kind words. And I'll also include in our Treaty 4 territory our ancestors representing then, now, today, and in the future, the Cree, the Dakota, the Lakota, and the Saulteaux peoples. And now please welcome our host for this evening, Jeremy Pilon from the Saskatchewan Government Insurance. Jeremy has worked for SGI for 15 years and is a communications officer in their media relations department. Jeremy?
Thank you so much, Teresa. Minister Ross, thank you for coming up and saying hello. And Knowledge Keeper Petra, thank you for your thoughtful blessing and for giving me a short interview before the show tonight. It really is great to see people out. I try and tell jokes over Zoom and they never land. My kids say it's because I'm not remotely funny. Thank you, please. It really is great to see such a strong turnout tonight. We are all in for a really interesting, inspirational message from one of our province's brightest lights when it comes to reconciling with the past and illuminating the way to a better future for all of us. SGI is very pleased to be the sponsor and support the Summer Solstice Speakers Series. I did it too, I said summer. It's an important part of SGI's commitment to reconciliation and to the Indigenous community here in Saskatchewan. We applaud the Friends of the Royal Saskatchewan Museum for hosting this event and for all 4 parts and for giving a voice and a platform for these important stories. Always with the housekeeping, right? So masks are, of course, welcome but not required, but please we welcome you to wear them. If you can make space between you, please do. Obviously in the theater, it's tight today. So sanitation stations are available in the lobby though. Washrooms are to the left, just out the theater when you leave, and emergency exits. So I think we got them here and here and towards the back. I should have been a flight attendant. If we do have to evacuate, please everybody meet in the parking lot. And then if you notice coming in, there's a lot of puddles around. Please be careful when you're leaving tonight if it's frozen. We don't want anyone slipping and getting hurt. Before I introduce Chief Cadmus Delorme, I would like to introduce Jordan Tapakan, grade 7 student from Mother Teresa Middle School, who will introduce the drum and dancer for the first song. Jordan.
Here's the pop place. And here's Jayda, okay? Yes, you can take your mask off. Okay, I go over a page for you.
Good evening. The Buffalo Boys began as an after-school program at Mother Teresa Middle School, MTMS. In 2016, led by MTMS Indigenous advocate Oskapewis, Evan Whitestar. Over time, the drum group has grown and features MTMS alumni who are in high school as well. By living the values of the drum, MTMS students are becoming resilient young leaders in the community and are honoring the Truth and Reconciliation Report's calls to action in a real and authentic way. The majority of MTMS students are registered Treaty 4 and Treaty 6 members. When MTMS students are performing at the Canadian Western Exhibition, at halftime during a Rough Riders game, or at a community event, they're exemplifying what a healthy lifestyle embedded in First Nations culture and education looks like. The Buffalo Boys provide a space for students to learn cultural practices, share in traditional ways, and have pride in who they are. Jayda Delorme is a Neheyo from Cowessess First Nation here in Treaty 4 territory. Born in 2002, graduated from Miller High School in Regina. She is now a student at the University of Regina in the Facility of Media, Arts, and Performance. Jayda is an artist of many trades from dancing, beading, painting, henna tattooing, body painting, and community artworks. Jayda is a women's traditional powwow dancer. Regina has had the opportunity to showcase art on the international stage at the World Body Painting Festival in Austria, where she placed in the top half of the amateur division. Jayda takes great pride in expressing Indigenous identity through art and dance. Jayda enjoys using art of many forms to contribute to local community projects. Jayda and MTMS perform one song. Let's give a round of applause for Jayda and Mother Teresa.
Let's show our appreciation once again for Jayda and Mother Teresa. And now Evan Whitestar will welcome Chief Cadmus Delorme with a prayer song. Thank you so much, Evan, Jayda, and the Buffalo Boys for your wonderful songs. Let's give it up for them one more time, please. Just going to be a short minute break here while we get everything moved around.
Help me understand. Oh.
Check. There we go. I think it's fair to say that our guest tonight probably needs no introduction. I think everybody here knows who he is. But he not only needs to be recognized for his actions and his leadership, but also for his vision of what a better future for the people of Saskatchewan and Canada can look like for both Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people alike. Cadmus Delorme is of Cree and Saulteaux heritage. He is currently serving his second term as Chief of the Cowessess First Nation. Chief Delorme graduated from Cowessess Community Education Center in 2000. He later moved to Regina to pursue a Bachelor of Business Administration and a Certificate of Hospitality, Tourism, and Gaming Entertainment Management from First Nations University of Canada, and a Master of Public Administration from the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy. Recently, he has completed an Institute for Corporate Directors designation. In 2012, Chief Delorme received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal, recognizing his student leadership and the hospitality he showed to Prince Charles and his wife Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, when they visited the First Nations University of Canada. He's also been named one of CBC Saskatchewan's Future 40, which celebrates the province's new generation of leaders, builders, and change makers under the age of 40. In 2019, Chief Delorme was re-elected to his second term in office, and under his leadership, the Cowessess First Nation is focused on economic self-sustainability and has moved forward on renewable energy, agriculture, efficiency, and land use initiatives that will create both current and future business opportunities for the people of Cowessess. This past year, Chief Delorme faced one of the hardest moments as chief when the Saulteaux and Cree First Nation made international headlines with the discovery of potentially 751 unmarked graves near the former Marieval Indian Residential School. Shortly after that, of course, Cowessess made headlines as the first First Nation, to sign an agreement with Ottawa that returns jurisdiction over children in care to the community. Federal legislation overhauling Indigenous child welfare was passed in 2019 and came into force last year. Chief Delorme lives with his wife Kimberly, his brother-in-law, his daughter, and 2 sons on the Cowessess First Nation. So it's a pretty big resume, so I don't know if there's much more to say, is there? It is my honor and my pleasure to present our featured speaker for the third Solstice Speaker Series, the twice-elected chief of the Cowessess First Nation, and the only person I know who has Anderson Cooper's phone number. Chief Cadmus Delorme, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, hang on, I'm giving away my slides already. Nanaskamun. Ogamau, Cadmus, Detisi Kasu, Nitugama Kaniwin, Cowessess is Squingwinik. I just said in Cree, it's a beautiful day. My name is Chief Cadmus Delorme. It's such an honor to look out and actually see an audience in real. I'm so used to Zoom and Microsoft Teams. I'm 39 years young. That's that reserve water. Why I look so young. People say I don't look 39. I'm kind of sad. I'm in my last 3 weeks of being in my 30s. I don't know what 40 is going to be like, but I'll take it on with like a champion. The journey that we're about to take in the next 40 minutes, I ask one thing of all of you. And let's put our shield down. Let's put our shield down and have an uncomfortable conversation. Because we cannot move to reconciliation until we first accept and understand the truth. We truly inherited this today, our current situation in 2022. Nobody today created the Indian Act. Nobody today created residential schools. But because we're all proud Canadians, we inherited this as Canadians. One of the things that has been a missed opportunity in this beautiful province and this country is how we have not allowed and accepted and better understood Indigenous ideology. And how, when it comes and welcomes into our already lives, how much more pure our lives will be. One of the things we got to understand is when you inherited something, is sometimes today we kind of have a little bit of ignorance. a little bit of accidental racism. And I don't mean that to corner anybody. This is a part of our uncomfortable conversation. Did you know Saskatchewan is a Cree word? Ki Saskatchewan Sipi means fast-flowing river. Our beautiful province that we call home, Living Skies, is named after a Cree word. The journey we're going to take is, I'm going to talk a little bit about truth. And then I'm going to talk about how beautiful Indigenous people really had it. Because sometimes today when we're learning about history, we focus right away on the Indian Act, on residential school, on 60s school. Very important, please. I'm not trying to say they're not. But one of the things we're missing as well is how beautiful the Indigenous ideology is, was, and continues to be. And then I'm going to finish off with the headlights, reconciliation. What does that truly look like? In order to understand the truth, I just want to show you a few slides. I just have a technical question. Am I on the mic? Okay, I can walk away. Okay, good. I felt so bound to the microphone there. All right. Today we're going to talk about Tapwewin, truth, and Mio Witsiwitawan, which in Cree means we all walk and share this together. That's the discussion we need to have. This past summer, Cowessess First Nation validated our unmarked graves. As a little kid, our bingo hall was about 100 meters from our gravesite. And the kids on a reserve, if you were on a reserve, you'd go to bingo with excitement, but you'd be running around the bingo hall outside with friends. That's kind of the reserve bingo lifestyle. And my mom would always say, don't go over there, there's unmarked graves. Never went. So people knew. When we had to validate, there's two things I learned as a spokesperson. For Indigenous people, the unmarked graves is validation. Validation of the pain, the frustration, the anger, the tiredness of just trying to remain Indigenous in a country that still somewhat oppresses. To my beautiful Canadian friends and family, what the unmarked graves did is the shield is down and admitting I don't know much about the truth between Indigenous people in Canada. We are truly at a moment in our country's history today where we all must reset our compass just a little bit. We don't know how long this window is going to be open. But right now, we have a moment in our history to truly get it right this time. Because Canada will go forward regardless. Society will move forward regardless. But it's our actions and attitude today where we have two things to tell our children and children yet unborn. Yes, we addressed it. Yes, we had the uncomfortable conversation. Yes, we implemented change. Or we can say, you deal with it, and we'll just give it to the next generation. I don't want to do that. We do have to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations. In the East Coast, there is a fishing dispute. A lot of Canadians, and I'm not saying anybody in this room, they should just follow the rules. It's out of season. You know, sometimes the media, and I'm not chalking up media, I know media have a tough job, but sometimes we're not hearing the true reason. This is about a treaty in 1752 that the British Crown, when they got here, they told the Mi'kmaq, we will honor to you to sustain your life. You know, I'm not adding up the score. I'm not trying to pick sides. I'm just showing you. On the West Coast, the Wet'suwet'en, there is a gas link pipeline. I'm not here to pick a side. I'm just telling you. This one is not about Indigenous people holding back economics. It's about Aboriginal title. We got to understand in our country, are we asking the right questions when we work with Indigenous people? Indigenous people are not shareholders. They're not stakeholders. We're rights holders. And that is not a bad thing. That's something we don't have to be afraid of. Indigenous people, because being here when Canada came and created another governing structure, the rights holders never went away. This is, in BC, they don't have treaties like we do in Saskatchewan. They have that very uncomfortable conversation to understand that Vancouver, the entire BC, they need to sit down with the rights holders, and they have to figure out the next 300 years through a treaty or a relationship. That's what this is about. 11 years ago, there was something called Idle No More. Idle No More was a movement because there was many legislative bills about to be passed in Ottawa that would have disrupted the treaty relationship, the inherent rights of the rights holders, and it was to remind Canada that Indigenous people must be respected as rights holders. I was very young when OCA happened. I don't remember it, but I was in university when I learned about it. This was about a land dispute. You know, the province at the day said, we followed all the bylaws. We followed all the steps. We're building that back nine. It's not about building the back nine. It's not about following. It's about a land dispute to respect the Mohawk, that they had a burial site there. As rights holders, they have that right. Some things in Canada, we have to realize. Oh, sorry, did I miss one? Did I? Oh, I missed this one. Looking at you, I wasn't looking backwards. 2 years ago, there was a camp that was set up. And I'm just using these as examples, please. And, people sometimes tried to add up the score. Police, Evan, break, get them out of there. Follow the bylaw. It's unsafe. Hey, listen, we have a pandemic in the north, an epidemic of suicides. We had a young girl in Winnipeg named Tina Fontaine who was murdered, and justice was never served. We have some mothers that just want to be invested because they're tired of losing their children. They set up camp to just start the conversation. So all I'm saying is, when we inherit something in this country, we have to understand that truth must come first. And I showed you those because we are having an uncomfortable conversation. Why is it in this country that we are just now starting to put our shield down and admit we don't know the truth? Why is that? I want to take you through what our education system did to put us in this position. And I'm going to break it down into generations. I'm going to start off with the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer generation, a lot of them are our seniors, elders today. They're our grandparents, our parents, our great-grandparents. And in our Indigenous ideology, they're our elders, they're our knowledge keepers, they're the ones that have seen 3 generations, so we honor that. But what did the education system tell our baby boomers when they were in elementary and junior high school? The truth is, the education system did not teach them nothing about Indigenous peoples. The thing is residential schools were at their all-time peak, worst. Physical, sexual, mental abuse was real. Indian Act, Indigenous people needed a pass just to leave the reserve. The only thing the baby boomers learned of Indigenous people was through Hollywood movies, through paint on the face, riding horseback, buckskin. Cowboys and Indians. When I played, I tell you the Indians always win. I'm just pre-warning you right now. Generation X. Generation X in this country is our decision makers today. Executive roles, MLAs, MPs. We rely heavily on this country, on our Generation X today. What did our Generation X learn about the truth? Generation X learned that the white paper was the solution of 1969 in school. That abolish Aboriginal title. First Nations, quit trying to be special. Just move off the reserve. Be Canadian. That's not the solution. If anybody in here thinks that's the solution, please stop it. You're wasting your energy. All you got to do is go to the Supreme Court of Canada and understand that Indigenous people won 275 cases in the Supreme Court of Canada, reminding Canadians, quit wasting money on lawyers. Nothing against lawyers in here. Just work with rights holders. The Generation Y, I'm a Generation Y. Generation Y got a little better, but it still wasn't the truth. Generation Y, we learned treaties happened, but somehow it was all about the confinements of the reserve, that it was all about land surrender, that somehow Indian Act and residential schools were a part of it, but I'm not sure because the teacher was having trouble trying to teach it to us. Today, we have the millennial generation, university students, graduating high school. We got Generation Z, which are beautiful Mother Teresa students rendered a beautiful song and danced. Jayda danced, thank you very much. We are overwhelming them with truth today, with the spirit and intent of treaties. What happened in residential schools? But these generations are going home to those tables, and they're telling their parents and grandparents the truth. And that's where sometimes that accidental racism and that ignorance comes. And I'm not blaming anybody in here. We just must understand there is no mandatory Indigenous studies class coming across this country for all Canadians. We must take it upon ourselves today to understand the truth. Because once we understand the truth, reconciliation makes it that much more important and open-minded. The second part about truth I want to talk about is what did happen to Indigenous people with colonization, with oppression, with all these legislative laws since conception of Canada. What happened to Indigenous people? I like to use a model called vertical lineage, and I'm going to use my maternal side to explain it to you. My great-great-grandmother, her English name was Gracie. Gracie was born in 1870. Gracie never attended a residential school. Gracie got her vertical lineage from her mom and her grandma. That is something that's promised in this country from the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. To every Canadian is vertical lineage that you will learn from your grandma, your mom, your daughter, and pass it down to granddaughter, so forth. That didn't happen with Indigenous peoples. What happened in my maternal lineage is Gracie had Maggie, my great-grandmother, born in 1900. Because of legislation, Maggie had to go to the Round Lake Indian Industrial School. Maggie should have got vertical lineage, but she didn't. Maggie went into horizontal survival mode, learning and surviving with her sisters and cousins. The physical, sexual, mental abuse was real. Maggie had my grandma Evelyn. Evelyn, because we live in a country of Charter of Rights and Freedom, should have got vertical lineage, but she didn't. Evelyn went into horizontal survival mode with her cousins and siblings. Evelyn had my mother Charlotte, third generation in my maternal side to attend a residential school. Charlotte should have got vertical lineage teachings, but Charlotte didn't. Charlotte went into horizontal survival mode. Charlotte had me. I never attended a residential school. My mom raised me and my siblings the best that she could in her own intergenerational trauma that she endured, and she endured some of the worst that we learned, and she did her best to be a mom to my siblings and I. Today, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and my mom and my daughter are like this. Our vertical lineage, I gotta be very proud to share, is back. In this country, there are over 1 million Indigenous people. In this province, we're 20% of this province. In this province, this is what's happening today. Some families, the vertical lineage is back. I praise them, I thank them, I want to learn more so we can help others. Some are at a 45-degree angle. Just because residential schools closed in 1996 doesn't mean intergenerational trauma still isn't here. Some families are at a 45-degree angle and they're getting stronger. Some are still at a horizontal survival mode. We don't judge as a province. We don't come and give them the solution. We better understand what intergenerational trauma is. That is what intergenerational trauma is. That is why it's so important that we make sure in our legislative that our laws have love and relationship in them. If there's one thing the Indian Act took out of Indigenous people's ideology is the love and the relationship. We must try put that back and embed it in. As society, that is what we have to understand. And so that is truly what we inherited. And I want to take you on a few other slides is to what are some solutions? Well, in this country, we have over 800 recommendations and solutions already. If someone's sitting there and saying, what can I do to change my frameworks, my policies in my social life and work life, here they are. The RCAP, Royal Commission on Aboriginal People, over 400 recommendations. In 1996, it was done. They're there. The Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. 94 calls to action. They're not recommendations. They're calls to action. Tonight, we should, give a little bit of gratitude to us in the room. We're doing number 57 and online. We're doing 57, professional development. We're better understanding the truths. You can do a lot of 57. But I'm saying there's 94 calls to action. Who are the authors of the TRC? The over 100,000 residential school survivors who told their story. One of the questions they were asked is, what can Canada learn to make sure we won't do this again? Here's what they asked of us as Canadians. When someone is getting into politics, if they come knock on your door, I don't say parties, but that's one of the questions we should be asking. What's your role with Truth and Reconciliation calls to action? In our social lives, if it's in our church or sports or something, we should be understanding these. In our work lives, in our school lives, this has to be embedded because these are what is being asked of us. The 231 calls to justice, the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls calls to justice. They're there. There are over 800 things that are already told to us as Canadians. If we're looking to change our frameworks and the way we approach it, I just give you these as examples. I got so much things to say. I'm going to skip a couple of slides. I want to show you a book first. I'm going to come back to James Daschuk, a beautiful Regina resident, grew up in Northern Ontario, vanilla-colored skin. He's not caramel-colored. He wrote a book called Clearing the Plains. I hope Jim's not here because I'm going to say a joke about him. I like Jim. I told Jim, I read your book. The first 3 chapters were really dry. You must have did your thesis on the first 3 chapters, eh? Because it gets really good after that. He laughed. I did do my thesis on the first 3 chapters. This is one of the books I'm going to recommend to you. But I want to get back to this picture because I want to talk about how it was. In James Daschuk's book, one of the chapters talks about surveyors that came to Saskatchewan, pre-Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories. British, wasn't even Canada yet. And these 2 surveyors came across these 3 warriors on horseback. I like to say these warriors were from Cowessess because he said they're really strong-looking warriors. These 3 warriors, this surveyor wrote in his diary, and it's captured in James's book. He said, I've never met such fit people, physically, mentally, emotionally in my life. They were so stoic and intimidating, he said, the way they looked at them, but the way they talked in harmony in their language and laughed at each other and then once so stoic again at them. They said they were like so intimidated and so fearful, but at the same time they felt so protected. And these 3 warriors gave them the best hospitality for 3 days. That's the Indigenous ideology. We're always about hospitality. We're always about welcoming. We'll feed you. We'll laugh with you. We'll tease with you. That's the Indigenous ideology. And that has never left us. How can we go in 5 generations from the most fitted they've ever seen to some of the realities we see today? I'm not trying to ask for pity of Indigenous people, but sometimes our mental mental state is due to the fact of oppression. This is a goal of ours to get back to. How really was it plus minus before treaty? We talk about treaty. I just wanted to explain to you. In a beautiful governance structure, this is how it was. As a nation, we would follow our resource. Today, our resource is potash and oil and trades, hospitality. That's our trades in 2022. In 1850, it was the buffalo. And we never wanted to disrupt the land too long, so we'd pack up camp, follow, and migrate with the buffalo. The ancestors of Cowessess would go from Qu'Appelle Valley in the summer to Minnesota in the fall to Montana in the winter, always ended up in Cypress Hills in the spring, because that was our ceremonial connection. That's where, I can still say it because there's snow on the ground, Wasakechuk. That was our connection to Wasakechuk in Cypress Hills. And we'd always end back up in the Qu'Appelle Valley in the summer. This is how camp was normally set up. On the outside was your home fires. That's where grandma, mom, daughter, granddaughter would live. The vertical lineage was strong. In the second circle was your societies. Societies like the hunting society, the medicine society, the navigation society. Everybody belonged to a society. There was no unemployment. There was no children in care. The way you voted was with your feet. If your family kinship didn't agree with the tribe and the direction, you'd pack up camp and go find family somewhere else. You voted with your feet. In the center of our teepee, of our governance structure, was the Women's Council, who made the final decision, who went to ceremony and advised the hereditary chief and headman, who were the spokespeople. That was the second one, with the hereditary chief and headman. And the school. The school was the most beautiful place. Kids would run to school in anticipation of learning. We had schools. They were a little different. One quick story about schools is we learned legendary stories. Many legendary stories were taught with humor, with never the answer. But it was taught to expand your brain, your mind, to know that the universe is where you belong. To think big, that who your ideology and who you are, that's what was taught. And so it was a very beautiful structure, and it worked. So Indigenous people, they had a beautiful governance structure, education system, they had a kinship model, they had laws that they followed. They're Indigenous. We don't learn enough about that. And I just wanted to share with this quickly, because sometimes when we're learning truth, we start at some of the challenging times. But let's just remember that Indigenous people had a beautiful system, and we still do today. This is a picture of End of the Trail. My mom plastered this all over our house as a kid. I always wondered why she had this everywhere. In university, at First Nations University, I did a research on this photo in one of our English classes. This actually is a really powerful drawing. And what it means is, in 1911, an Ojibwe male elder was about to pass away, and he drew this photo. In 1911, this man never attended a residential school, but he felt defeated as an Indigenous person in 1911. We were already going on to our second generation of residential school. He's seen the change. He didn't like it. He drew this picture of a warrior and a warrior horse on the top of a hill, feeling defeated. But one of the things in the picture is he never threw down his spear. He didn't give up. He was just sad. One of the things we got to try and do in life is try and get back to this state. And I'm not saying buckskin and horseback. I'm saying get back to this state with the confidence, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. That is a goal as a society. We must help not only just Indigenous people, but even help Canadians better understand. This is a picture of my mom and dad. My dad passed away in 2017. He got to see me be a chief. And it was a beautiful, beautiful time. And my mom in there, and my wife Kim and I got my master's in 2016, this was taken. And I give a lot of my credit to my parents because they went through a lot, which kind of wants to lead me to the ending of my presentation because I think I'm already almost done and I have so much to say. But I want to talk about what reconciliation is. You know, we talked about what the truth is. We went back and talked about how beautiful it was. Let's talk about the headlights of reconciliation. Reconciliation could happen the following way. And I'm going to use a two-canoe analogy. I'm not teaching the wampum belt, but I'm just going to teach you how it could be and what we truly inherited. In your mind, picture two canoes going down a river. Just picture them, just an analogy. This is what Chief Cowessess, my chief that agreed to treaty, thought of treaty. In this province, many First Nations are named after the male hereditary chief who agreed to treaty. Chief Pasqua, Chief Muscapeding, Chief Cowessess, Chief Kakawishtaha, so forth. Chief Cowessess was sitting there 2 days before treaty agreement. Chief Cowessess seen this 1860 pandemic of smallpox. Chief Cowessess seen the buffalo depleted. He knew change was coming, but he was confused because he didn't know what the future was going to entail. Chief Cowessess was sitting there 2 nights before treaty was agreed to, and he was watching everybody go to this one person. This person didn't really have a title. The commissioner, everybody was going to this one person. And so finally Chief Cowessess asked the interpreter, "Who is that person?" And the interpreter said, "He's the lawyer." And Chief Cowessess says, "What's a lawyer?" "He went to school, he learned through books, he's trying to explain it to him." So Chief Cowessess said, "Oh, so you mean if I agreed to treaty, could my kids be like him but still remain like me?" And the interpreter went and got the commissioner, came back and said, "Absolutely. That is what treaty is all about." They talked about the benefits. 2 days later, Chief Cowessess didn't know what a signature was, didn't know how to speak English. He touched a pen on this new journey. This is what he envisioned. 2 canoes going down the river. One canoe Cowessess, the other canoe the Crown. Canada, Saskatchewan. To flow down this river as long as the sun shines, grass grows, river flows. Every generation they were supposed to exchange a child in the other canoe to learn the ideology of that canoe and then give them back. Every generation we would adapt together. That is what should have happened at treaty, but it didn't. 2 years after Treaty 4, the Indian Act was thrown in the Cowessess canoe. The Indian Act had one purpose: to imprison the minds of Cowessess people so that women played a lesser role, that the hereditary chief system didn't work anymore, that Canada would tell you how to appoint your leaders, that the governance structure that you beautifully had no longer works. So the Cowessess canoe kind of fell behind. 22 years later, the residential school was thrown in the Cowessess canoe. It had one purpose: to brainwash the Cowessess people, to submit to the Queen, to quit praying to the Creator, but pray to the God that we tell you, that men can't have braids anymore because of that spiritual connection. And the Cowessess canoe fell behind even more. In 2022, the Cowessess canoe is trying to catch up. We're not asking Canada to slow down. We're not trying to take another river. We're not telling Canada to pack up and go back to Europe. At least not all of us are. I gotta admit, some people do. I don't say that, though. All we want is to catch up. Invest in our canoe. And in Cree, we say, "Awas, I'll go away. Awas, get out of our canoe. Let us control our destiny. And let us catch up." That's reconciliation. One of the examples is this summer, Cowessess brought the Prime Minister of Canada and the Premier of Saskatchewan to Cowessess First Nation. A very rare appearance when a Premier and a Prime Minister, especially a Liberal and a Sask Party, they were so nice to each other. I just kind of had to laugh all day. And they came to Cowessess and they signed an agreement. They signed an agreement to empower Cowessess canoe with our Mio Pima Tisuin Act, our child welfare reform law, based on our laws. Not only did they come to show their support, but they invested in our canoe. And and the Cowessess canoe's catching up. Today, we are sponsoring mothers to go back to school. Children are watching their moms take university. We're giving elders respite. Before, elders were kind of afraid to tell the ministry they needed respite. They were afraid they were going to lose their grandchildren. Today, we tell the elders, tell us you need respite. We know your kinship, your vertical lineage needs investment. Just tell us, what do you need? We have no more children in care on Cowessess. We have children in care outside of Cowessess, but we're getting stronger one day at a time. That is what needs to happen with reconciliation. The second part of reconciliation in my conclusion is this. My daughter last summer, her name is Callie. We're playing outside on Cowessess, and there was a plane in the sky. So we're an hour and a half east of Regina, 3.5 hours west of Winnipeg. If anybody's adding it up, yeah, I drive fast. And there was a plane in the sky, so it was really small, and my little girl, she said, Dad, what's that? And I told her, that's a plane. Of course, when you tell a 5-year-old, they're going to ask you why 6 times. So finally, I'm like, it's like a car, but you have people in the car, and you're driving it. That's a plane. She's like, Dad, can I drive it? I was like, oh, you want to be a pilot? One day, my love, you'll be a pilot, I told her. The next day, I was driving to work, and I'm like, oh, my little girl wants to be a pilot. Then I started thinking, my little girl is an Indigenous female. In 2022, did you know that Indigenous females have to try twice as hard in this country and they only reap half the benefits? That is a truth in this country. Why is it that my wife and I have to try twice as hard for my 5-year-old daughter to be a pilot? We will attain and get the reconciliation the day that my daughter could succeed like Canadians' daughters, granddaughters, nieces. That is why Indigenous ideology and understanding the truth is so important. That is why don't do Truth and Reconciliation just on September 30th or just when there's a couple Indigenous people in your office. And I'm not saying any of you do that. Do it for the fact that there is truly inequality, and this is what we inherited. In conclusion, I just want to thank you. I have one funny story to tell you, and I'm done. There's so much more. Oh, here, I'll tell you my other homework. Here's a really good book. So first was the Clearing the Plains, and I just want to be in full disclosure. I get no royalties on these books. Clearing the Plains. Heavy book, tough book. You're going to have to pray because it is a real tough truth. But it is a truthful book. I really give honor to the author on this one. He did it very well. Sheldon Karowski, No Surrender. If you want to learn about the true relationship and what happened at treaty, Sheldon captures a really good understanding. Economics is really important to all of us. That is society. That is what drives us every day. Caroline captures it through Indigenomics. Please, this one's on Audible, so if anybody's an Audible person, this one's on Audible. The other two you got to actually read. I want to finish off with this picture. So, if anybody ever met the Prime Minister, he's a real personal guy. Eh? Like I just, so Prime Minister was on Cowessess this past summer, July 6th. And Prime Minister, Premier, and myself, and the entire community was in the Arbor. It was beautiful. And we each had to give a speech. So I went first, then Prime Minister, then Premier. I got up there, and if anybody knows me, I can't write my speeches because I'll stutter. So I speak from the heart. And I got up there and I'm trying to sound humble, I gave a pretty deadly speech. I got it. And so when I was done, I come walking over, and so, Prime Minister's there, Premier. I walk up to Prime Minister, and when I reached out, he pulled me in really close. And so my first reaction was to put my hand behind him. I don't know why. And he was like, did you write that? All from the heart, big guy, I told him. So the funny part about this is later that night, my wife and I were laying in bed. The day was just amazing. It was my first time looking at my phone all day because I was just so busy and
Grab a seat.
We don't need to keep that one up there, do we? Let's leave that one. That's a good one.
No. All right, have they got us mic'd up? All right. Thank you for that. That was a tremendous speech.
Thank you.
My wife looks at the Prime Minister the same way. So you mentioned at the end of your talk there, you're just Cadmus from Cowessess. We were elected as the leader of Cowessess, but it's a small community, and now you found yourself speaking on behalf of First Nations people across Canada, on behalf of children who no longer have a voice. How has that changed you? What do you see in the world now different? How does that new role fit you?
Thank you. I have a nephew in the crowd. I'm going to just do a call out. His name is Eagle Dubois, and he sang up here. And I have a braid because of Eagle Dubois. And I'm just going to give you, to answer your question, in around 2013-14, Eagle, it's my nephew and his dad, and Eagle came home one day and he told his dad, I don't know if I want to braid anymore, Dad. I kind of getting teased at school, he said. And Mike's like, my son needs to see men with braids, and Mike and I grew our braid, and I never cut it, and today, I know we have a responsibility together, and when we had to tell the story of the validation of unmarked graves, as the world was probably watching Cowessess, I was focusing on one audience, and that was the residential school survivors. I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to trigger them, and they're going to be driving their car, sitting at home. And today I speak so hopeful and positive because residential school survivors deserve hope. And that is something that I ask, I do myself, my responsibility, but, let's just show them that we're listening, and let's make sure that we continue with hope, because at the end of the day, that's all we have is hope, and so let's use hope as our driver.
Yeah. You've had a couple of major challenges as chief. This is the first time I've been on a stage in 2 years, and I think you were mentioning it's the first time you've been on a stage in a while because of the pandemic. What challenges, we hear the challenges that affect the world at large. What challenges did you have at Cowessess?
The pandemic was tough. I pretty much, as one of the 9 elected officials, had to go against what we've always done, and that's gatherings, that's eating together, that's, powwows, festivities, kinship. We pretty much told everybody, stay home. And so, the beautiful part about it is some took it personal, I got to admit. I got the few told where to go and how to get there. But it was a collective. But the thing is the mental emotional gap is actually increased in the last 3 years when it comes to Indigenous people's investment in mental emotional health. It's actually gotten worse. And what I mean by that is COVID-19 created a loneliness, and sometimes, many people who are, trying to move past that traumatizing thing that happened. I'm not saying all Indigenous people, but some, being home all the time kind of reopened that. And then secondly, the unmarked graves, I seen my strongest Indigenous advisors break down when the unmarked graves hit. It was truly a lot. And so that mental emotional gap has actually increased. But the same thing is I think we now have our foundation as Indigenous people, as we kind of have our own truth and reconciliation to do it. Canada has theirs. We kind of have ours internally too that we can't forget or ignore. So that's kind of the challenges I see today, but of course, I'm a hopeful person. I actually see it as now that we kind of know where we have to start from, we'll grow from there.
Yeah. Your people and my people, it's been almost 15 years now that we've been working towards reconciliation. And yet, even 15 years on, you were listing all the things, and there's 400 steps here, and what are some of the steps that people should be taking? And maybe not the easiest steps, and I just about said that, but that's not what I mean. The most important ones. What is it that makes the most impact?
I'm going to go to one that, sparks a really good debate. I'm going to go to an apology from the Roman Catholic Church. And, I'm going to use 2008 as an example to lead to my comment. And there's so much to talk about. Please, I'm going to talk about this one. In 2008, when Stephen Harper apologized for the role Canada played, my late dad, very strong man, never really hugged me, never really gave me that affection, but he was my protector. I knew he did everything, but he couldn't do it to me because of something that happened to him in residential school. And in 2008, when Stephen Harper apologized, I watched this big man who showed no affection change that day. One of the things that he told me, a day after is, my boy, and he used his own words, but he's like, I never thought someone would ever apologize for what I went through. And I was like, Dad, what did you go through? Because he never talked about it with me. And, my dad changed that day. My dad changed, and he was more of a, showed his heart and stuff like that. Today, the role the Roman Catholic Church played was a direct role. And, right now we have a delegation that potentially might be going to the Vatican. And I hope that they're going there to educate the team so when they come to Canada, that the Pope will apologize. Apology is good, but one of the things that we got wrong in 2010 with the apology and then the common experience is individuals were given financial money. Who benefited? The economy benefited. These Indigenous people that endured this pain had to tell their story, open up those wounds, and after they spent their money, they went back home and they're like, I kind of feel worse now than I did before. So what we need to do this time is when that next apology comes, let's balance it with investment of mental and emotional, and let's show their grandkids, because that's where they get their fuel from, is the grandkids. So, if I can just sum it up by saying what is important is acknowledging the truth, apology is really important, and then next is start to check mark them, put them in your strategic plan. You can't do them all, 57, 92. Right now in corporations and businesses, there is an invisible ceiling where Indigenous people hit. All you got to do is go around your corporate tables, your management. So much vanilla-colored people. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but where's the caramel-colored people here? There's nothing wrong with that. So the thing is we have to get rid of those glass ceilings so that everybody can strive. But I can go on and on, but I'll leave it there.
You kind of touched on it in your speech here, and I've heard you speak on it before. What do the Indigenous people need from Canadians to integrate in the economy and to become a valuable part of the economy and a beneficiary of that economy as well?
It's a great question. I want to start off by saying, it's not that Indigenous people are not part. There's some great Indigenous people a part of this economy today. I've met them and they're doing amazing. And I'm going to use an example of Cowessess has a 1 megawatt turbine. We're about to have 11 megawatts of solar on the east side of Regina. We welcomed in Minister O'Regan there last week, Minister of Labour for Canada, and he was so impressed when he got there. There was 34 people installing solar panels. 28 of them were Indigenous people. And I was telling him, we started off with one, I told him. And what we told the company we signed an agreement with is you must build capacity with Indigenous people. And so now today, that's what that company did. And so what we need to do is don't just recognize the land when you do acknowledgements. follow it up with something you're doing as a company or a government. And if you can't think of something, then you got to pick up your game a little bit. Because acknowledging the land is one thing, but follow it up with something you're actually doing with TRC. It kind of holds your feet to the fire a little more. And, but you know, capacity building is huge. Training is huge. And you know, on Cowessess, when we sign strategic alliances now in solar, in agriculture, in land development, we always make sure in our clause that they are training our Indigenous people to one day fill those shoes and replace them. And we tell them that that's not a bad thing, but you come in and share your knowledge. And that's what we must do as Canada. We must integrate and understand that sometimes, you know, challenges happen. And sometimes great things happen. And I guarantee you we're going to see more in caramel-colored faces, I like to say. I like to be very neutral on this. In areas where this economy really will thrive together.
All right. Let's lightning round some fun questions. What's your comfort food?
I'm a keto and low carb. So right now, I'm obsessed with chopped leaf. When I see chopped leaf, I'm stopping there for one of their salads.
Fantastic. Where would you love to travel?
I'm a Vegas person. I don't drink. I don't gamble. I just love the people. Yeah.
Okay. What else was I going to ask? I blanked on that last question. So let's move to one that you asked me to ask you. What's your vision? You led me into this.
20 years ago, I wouldn't take you to the bar with me. You throw off my A game.
I didn't deserve it. But it's a good question, and it's one I think we all want to hear. Where do you see Saskatchewan in 50 years? Where will we all be? Well, I won't be around probably, but...
In 50 years, I hope that I'm shooting my age on the golf course. I'll probably be around 86. And there's two. Let's say right now we're at that moment of adjusting our compass. If we adjust our compass correctly today, I could see us balancing a budget in this province on budget day, which is tomorrow, in 50 years from now, where the incarceration, the social services, majority of that is in economics and social impact in a good way and culture. And I could see us almost like New Zealand, where New Zealand stopped fighting the Maori in the 60s and they started welcoming them in. And today they have a beautiful hybrid. I'm not saying it's perfect, but they had a beautiful hybrid. We are truly 20% of this province, and we're increasing. People ask why. I say it's because we're sexy and we know it. That's why we're increasing so fast. But the thing is if we don't adjust our compass, I tell you, in 50 years, our budget will probably look similar to today. And it is not a good place to invest more in incarceration and social services than it is to growth. And so we truly are at that turning point right now.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today, for sitting down with me, tolerating me. I swear we'll do better next time. I'll do better next time. I'd like to welcome back Jayda and the Buffalo Boys, who want to sing an original song to close the evening off. Chief Delorme, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let me tell you a story about when I was just a boy. God told me better learn how to sing and dance all night long. Way out, way on, turning to another old South song. Way out. Let me tell you a story about when I was just a boy. God told me better learn how to sing and dance all night long. Way out, way on, turning to another old South song. Way out, way on.
Thank you to the Buffalo Boys. Thank you, everybody, again. Thank you to the Buffalo Boys and to Chief Cadmus Delorme for being here tonight. We hope that tonight's talk will move everyone to continue making meaningful efforts towards reconciliation. On behalf of Teresa Walter and everyone here at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum, on Craig Perot and the Friends of the Royal Saskatchewan Museum, Mother Teresa Middle School, Jayda and Tim, Chili for Children, and everyone at SGI, thank you so much for coming here tonight and supporting the third of the four Solstice series. Keep watching for announcements. We're going to have another one in June. Yeah, keep an eye out for that. And remember when you're leaving please be careful. It is icy out there. And I'm from SGI, so I have to remind you all, by law, to please drive safe, folks. We all want you to get home safe. Thank you.